my one chance to be tall. I'm going to take it. Ooh, this microphone feels really loud, doesn't it? Can you all hear me? Okay. No, we haven't started yet.
Do you not care? Sound is weird.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Be right back.
Are we good? Give me 3:35 on my clock.
And this is the end of the day. Absolutely.
All right. Hi, everybody. Let's see, how are we doing here with this microphone? Okay. Hello, everyone. Hello and welcome. Welcome to New America. And thank you for joining us for today's event, Harnessing Neuroscience to Help Gen Z Navigate the Path to Adulthood, featuring Lisa Lawson, President and CEO of the Annie E. Casey Foundation, and Anne-Marie Slaughter, CEO of New America. So thank you for joining us today on this somewhat frigid day in Washington, D.C., and thank you for those of you who've joined us online. My name is Mary Alice McCarthy. I'm a senior director here at New America, and I lead our Center on Education and Labor. For those of you not familiar with New America, we are a think and action tank headquartered in Washington, D.C., but with people, friends, and partners around the country. We incubate ideas, policies, and solutions for a new America by connecting research to practice and by creating spaces for open dialogue and shared learning. At the Center on Education and Labor at New America, we focus on improving transitions between our education system and the world of work, and ensuring that today's students are able to access family-sustaining careers. That means paying very close attention to the quality of our education programs and paying very close attention to the quality of the jobs that those programs are preparing people for. So at the center, we're particularly focused on models of career education in high schools and community colleges that put people on a path to economic security. With the generous support of the Annie E. Casey Foundation, and 6 other national philanthropies, we lead something called the Partnership to Advance Youth Apprenticeship, which we affectionately call PAYA. Now, this is a partnership with 9 other national organizations that are working with communities around the country to build high-quality apprenticeship opportunities for young people. These are programs that start in high school, bridge into college, and provide the student apprentices with the opportunity to gain hands-on paid job training and work experience with a mentor, while also earning their high school degree and transitioning into college. And we started this work back in 2018 with 9 communities, and we're now working with over 90 communities in all parts of the country. So it's been incredibly rewarding work, and with each passing year, it seems more urgent to us. Because young people in America today are struggling. They're struggling in school, they're struggling in the labor market. Those who are working are often struggling in their first jobs. And for the 4.2 million young people who are neither in school or in work, they're really struggling and facing just considerable challenges. Many of you may have heard that the labor force participation rate of young people has been dropping for decades, with little sign of any change or movement in the other direction. As recently as 2000, which believe me is recent for some of us, half of young people ages 16 to 19 were in the labor force. Today, that number is around 36%. Among 20 to 24-year-olds, 80% were in the labor market in 2000, and that stands at about 70% today. That's a dramatic decline, right? Labor market data indicates that firms are increasingly reluctant to hire young people, including college graduates. And we know from tons of research that early work experience is incredibly important and a really important predictor of later economic stability for people. And I think we also know intuitively that a society that doesn't nurture and develop its young people is not going to succeed over the long term. And so that brings us to today's event, right? We're here to hear from Lisa Lawson about her new book, Thrive, how the science of the adolescent brain helps us imagine a better future for all our children, from New Press, 2025. There's copies outside if you didn't see them when you came in. So this is a fantastic book, right? So thank you, Lisa. And in it, she unpacks in very readable and compelling prose the neuroscience behind adolescent development and the enormous opportunities we have to better support young people and in the process better support all of us, right? Lisa confronts and dispels some common myths about youth development, about when brain development ends, and about what the best ways to support young people are. And she also lays out some concrete ways we can take advantage of these growth opportunities to benefit young people. Key among those strategies is for helping young people are programs that allow them to build relationships with adults, provide real-world work experience, and also give them a sense of purpose, which is another definition of youth apprenticeship. I'll just happen to mention there. But again, we see really great alignment between everything that Lisa wrote in this book and the work that we're doing here in New America through the Partnership to Advance Youth Apprenticeship. So I just want to say, too, though, just on a more personal note, that when I read your article in The Atlantic this summer, I hadn't yet discovered the book, but I was reading this article completely, just in the morning, reading an article, and I was like, oh, that looks interesting. And as I read it, though, it really sort of was like a light bulb going off. And for any of us, I think, who have worked with young people in sort of work-based learning opportunities or youth apprenticeship, the thing that is always really noticeable about these young apprentices is just how confident they are. These are 16 and 17-year-old kids, and yet they just are carrying themselves with a level of confidence and poise and ease that you don't always see among their peers. And in this work that we do specifically with youth apprenticeship, we always look at the German and Swiss systems, and we go to Germany on a study tour, and you meet these young Germans, and you're like, wow, that is a really mature 17-year-old, But the longer I've done this work here in the United States, and we've been working with youth apprentices, and we have one here at New America, Megan Godoy, a fantastic youth apprentice, and we have a Youth Apprentice Council, which has really brought us into a lot of contact. You see the exact same thing, right? You see young people who just have a sense of ease and confidence that I think comes from being a valued colleague and a respected member of the team. And so it doesn't matter whether or not, at first it was like, well, maybe it's because they're German, but it doesn't matter if you're German or from Georgia, a youth apprenticeship experience is going to build your confidence and it's going to build your resistance. So thank you for that. That article really helped me understand that. And it helped me understand that this is related actually to a young person's development, what's going on in their brain, what's going on with them on many levels. So I know that our audience is going to really enjoy hearing more about that. And so Lisa will be in conversation with Anne-Marie Slaughter, our CEO and fearless leader here at New America. Anne-Marie has written extensively about the importance of caring relationships, right, and our care economy, calling for much greater attention to the many, many positive effects of enabling widespread caregiving across our society for young people, for elders, for little ones. Just a few more notes on our speakers before I turn it over. In addition to being the president and CEO of the N.E. Casey Foundation since 2019, Lisa Lawson hails from Atlanta, is a graduate of the University of Virginia and also the University of Michigan Law School. And during her tenure at the Casey Foundation, built out a robust body of work on young people and youth development, including the Thrive by 25 initiative, which I'm guessing provided a lot of information for this book. And in addition to being CEO of New America since 2013, Anne-Marie Slaughter has held distinguished positions at Harvard Law School and Princeton University, including as Dean of the School of Public and International Affairs. 2009, she was appointed Director of Policy Planning at the U.S. State Department, the first woman to hold that position. She is a prolific writer herself, author and editor of 9 books, including several on the importance of care. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the two authors.
So Mary Alice, thank you for that. We're going to dive in. I'm going to say one thing just about the fact that we're having this conversation in January of 2026. In case you hadn't noticed, it's the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and many of us have been watching Ken Burns' The American Revolution, and at least in my case, going, they had the revolution in North and South Carolina and Georgia. I thought it was all Massachusetts and Virginia. But one of the things that I've been thinking about is, we're a nation of invention and reinvention. We are a nation where young people, for as long as we've been here as a nation, have sort of struck out to make their fortune and to thrive. And the question is, how do we do that again today? Not just, I wouldn't go for the next 250. How about the next 25 years that you really can't thrive as a nation if your young people are not thriving? And it is also an area where right and left or blue and red or whatever we want to call ourselves these days really often share that desire and also believe in apprenticeships. So just to situate the day's event in this conversation, but this is a great, it's really a wonderful book. I have two sons who are 27 and 29, and I'm reading along going, where was this book 10 years ago? Where was this book 15 years ago? So any parents or young people in your lives, whoever is raising them could use it. You start, Lisa, the book with three things, and I loved really all of these. So first is this wonderful quote from Frederick Douglass, which you have as the epigraph, that says, it is easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men. So that's the first thing you read, and it really gets you. And then Governor Wes Moore writes the foreword, and it's fascinating, actually. I mean, he opens with this anecdote about being sent to a military high school. I love his conversations with his mama. It's like,
who worked at the Annie Casey Foundation.
That's right.
His mother worked in communications
exactly.
at Casey, so he is a Casey kid in some ways.
But he really talks about what it took for him to thrive. And then you open the book. I just love it's also a textbook way to grab an audience's attention, a 3-word sentence that gets you. It says, I love teenagers. And I have to say, I looked at it, my immediate reaction is, I don't. It was not my favorite part of parenting. Later teenagehood, maybe, but 13, I just remember as monosyllabic and sulky. But so with those three openings, like better to do it now than to try to repair broken men. The story, Wes Moore, who's now governor, obviously of Maryland's had a stellar career, and then your own experience with teenagers. Talk about this focus on not kids, because those are easier, teenagers and their transition to thriving at 25.
Yeah, as I joined the foundation and learned more about this work, I really saw teenagers as quite a misunderstood and often overlooked period of development. And we'll go into brain science and how I learned about brain science, but it occurred to me that we were missing something in not really being attentive to what's happening during this developmental period, which is separate and unique and different than childhood or early childhood or adulthood. It really is its own 10-year journey. And I, in this role, have the pleasure of meeting probably thousands and thousands of teenagers, and they are the most creative and funny and compassionate, actually, people, some of them, that I've ever met. So I really came to fall in love with teenagers. And as I was writing this book, someone said, well, just write that. Like, if that's how you feel, that you should write that. So that's why that's the very first 3 words of the book. But I thought it was important for others to understand this developmental science that I thought really ought to drive more of how we see and serve young people. And Governor Wes Moore, who I know from his mother, I know him first as Joy Moore's son, it exemplifies what it means for a young person to struggle as a teenager, but have brilliance inside of them. No different than the founder of the Casey Foundation, a guy named Jim Casey, who started UPS. He started the company at 19 years old. Again, a brilliant teenager who many would have sold short, who dropped out of school in 3rd grade. but had within him the brilliance to start the world's largest logistics company. So I just have seen all around me these amazing, brilliant young people who, when given the right set of opportunities, when connected to the right people, are able to really shine. And so that's what the book is trying to reveal, to sort of explain to us, either as parents or as professionals, what might be going on in the minds of young people, and to help us think about what we need to do to help them have successful lives. Because as you said in that epigraph or epitaph in the beginning, that it's better for us to be proactive in that process than trying to help them recover if we don't give them the things that they need.
So let's turn to the neuroscience, which is fascinating. I often think if I were back in college today, this is what I'd want to study. So you have a great example where, and I've already quoted it to one of my sons, but you write, when a toddler is learning to walk and falls, we celebrate their attempt rather than berate them for falling, right? You've never seen a little toddler learning to walk and go, why'd you fall? Right? It's how great, you took one step or two. But we don't give teenagers nearly as much grace. Talk to us about the similarities between toddlers and teenagers and what that does in the brain.
So toddlers are going through a period of physical development. Their, muscles are getting stronger. They are learning how to, move themselves. We find that cute and adorable. Well, in teenagers, their brains are developing, and our brains grow from the back to the front. It takes about 10 years. And the very last part of our brains to develop is the very front. I joke with my daughter, like her, she's 23. She's like right here above the eyebrows, is what's called executive functioning. And so this is this profound period of emotional, cognitive, and social development. And it is not done until young people are in their mid-20s. And so we are often talking to them and have expectations of them as teenagers that they really haven't built the muscle to deliver yet. And so we should not be so hard on them, so critical of them. They do deserve our compassion and grace, because in the same way a toddler cannot make themselves walk faster, a young person cannot make their brain develop faster. It is a natural developmental process. And so that's why I equate it to being a toddler. It's the exact same development process, just at a different age. They're just larger and maybe not as adorable.
And smellier.
But they really do deserve our grace and our encouragement as that developmental process happens. It just needs something different from us. The kind of supports that we give them during that time are different than the sort of hand-holding that happens when toddlers are learning to walk. And that's where I think adults get a bit confused. They are used to command and control when young people are younger. As they get older, they need conversation and compassion. And we as adults aren't really taught how to do that, but that's what's required, and the way that the relationship is built in a trusting way with teenagers.
I love that, because as a parent or as an aunt or uncle or teacher, what you're so struck by often is the physical transformation, and they suddenly look like adults. But when you use the toddler image, you suddenly you can't see the brain. But if you really understand, no, that's just a facade, and behind it is this brain that is very much developing. I do think it would help.
And we don't know as adults, but we also don't tell teenagers this. No. We give them lots of reproductive education, but rarely ever talk to them about what's going on in their brain. Puberty is just a small part of adolescence. I write in the book about my daughter who had a forward-thinking biology teacher who taught them a unit on brain science in the 9th grade. And she really felt like there were all these ahas about why she wasn't fully together as a 13 or 14-year-old. But I joked that it also gave her the ability to say when she wasn't together, well, my prefrontal cortex hadn't developed. And
that's exactly what I was thinking. The range of excuses, I can hear them now. Mom, I can't do that.
My brain is not developed yet. But I think we should teach young people about what's happening in their brains so that they can understand the development that's happening.
Exactly. So let's talk about then what we should be doing once we understand that to help them. And you talk about the power of connection. And here, I just think that is so important. In my own writings, I've looked at the kind of hierarchy of needs, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you, of course, start with physical needs. And in his version, love and belonging are sort of at the center, and then you get to self-actualization, which is at the top. And actually, the science, the neuroscience, the biology, the anthropology, all shows that it's not like that. I don't know what would the perfect representation, but as I think about it, those needs are equal, right? Yes, you need to self-actualization, and at the same time, and of equal strength, you need connection, care, and belonging. Community is another way. So your focus on connection, another way to think about it is really, like a cathedral needs flying buttresses to support it. That connection to others, to stable, caring adults is a big part then of how we get them there.
It is, and it's not just about the relationship, but the other things that relationship can connect a young person to. So I don't think it's that one is above the other, but that connection is what can enable a young person to get the resources that they need, the opportunities that they need, and the relationship is the navigation mechanism for that. We'll talk about the sort of 5 core things I talk about that young people need as they are navigating adolescence. But connection is everything, and especially for young people who make mistakes. And don't we all make mistakes as we are navigating our way toward adulthood? That connection is what helps that young person know it's going to be okay. I've got you. You're not going to fall off of this, this bridge that you're on. Let's talk about how we recover from whatever may have happened. What do you dream of? This is a person who helps you navigate your way to the things that you dream of. And this is the person who maybe most authentically sees you. Young people want nothing more than to be seen and to be understood, and that's what that connection enables you to do. It creates a trusting foundation through which young people are able to then navigate their way to the opportunities or to get connected to the resources they may need in order to make it to adulthood. So connection is everything. And at our work at the foundation, we do lots of work around young people who are in the foster care system and try to make sure the most important thing we want them to have is a permanent relationship that's going to serve them for a lifetime.
Yes, and as a former professor, a lot of the students I mentored are still part of my life. I was not as close, obviously, as a relative, but always, I always say, you're always there when a recommendation is needed. But you're here. But that is, and it's also interesting that we know connections are wealth. Right? We're always talking about somebody who got a job or somebody who got something they wanted through connections. And that's our way of saying, well, they're connected to the right people, whether it's wealth or talent or whatever. But we don't think about the connections we can build. We don't think that anybody can create social wealth that way.
You can, and I'll say 2 things. Connections also matter in the workplace as it relates to New America's work. This is where young people find their first mentors, people who tell them about other kinds of opportunities. So connection matters in the workplace as well. And I think it's so important that we think about the ways we as individuals or in the workplace or in our communities can be a valuable relationship for the young people around us. I invite people to be bridge builders. I use this metaphor in the book about young people crossing the bridge of adolescence, and we are all bridge builders. We have to make sure that bridge is strong for young people. So I'm glad you opened with connection, because that really is essential for young people.
So you have 5 things. We're going to talk about them. So you talk about the sort of idea to get going, and I want you to talk about all 5. this idea that the connections, if you look at the connections as a whole, what you're doing is building an ecosystem, and that is family, school, work, sports, all it could church, whatever those things are, but we need to think about them and how they interact with one another.
Right. I think that's one of the biggest misses we have as a society is that we try to engineer a pathway for young people in these silos. Well, here's education, and here's work, and here's your basic needs. Here are the relationships you have. Young people experience them all together, yet we try to manage them both practically, policy, separately. That doesn't really make any sense. It is an ecosystem that young people are growing up within. So, it really is a call to action for us to think about the ways we can better integrate the ecosystem for young people so that we aren't, and that we think about how to solve problems across those silos. So an employer, while they are a job, they are also a way to navigate young people to supports that they may need, and transportation supports. I can't get here. How am I going to show up and be a good employee? So yes, I think this notion of seeing what young people are navigating as an ecosystem and not just individual services and supports.
It's one of the most sort of evident dimensions of PIA itself that the teacher talks to the employer. Mm-hmm. And that idea that actually, that the teacher would think about, well, here's what I'm teaching and here's what the student needs in the workplace. And obviously you never, it's like the debates over liberal arts education. It doesn't mean you're going to teach to the test or teach exactly what they need, but understanding here's how that math can work, here's the level, and soon, of course, it's also using technology. But that's just one bridge. We're actually, Lisa Guernsey, who runs our birth through 12 programs, we're starting to investigate learning ecosystems. What are the different parts exactly of learning? You're talking about learning and life.
Well, I think that's one of the most brilliant things about PIA. I mean, it is connecting school and work, community college and high school. That's the kind of navigation young people need. Otherwise, they're left to their own devices and they don't know how to get across to this thing they see on the other side. So it is such a beautiful example of how we can do some of the work for them and tie systems together in ways that are going to make it so much easier for them to get from an educational opportunity to a work opportunity. We blended them together already for them. And just think of the millions of young people who have just the same kind of capabilities, but have no idea.
And no bridge.
They don't know how to get there. So that's a perfect example of how we can do that kind of work, that knitting together that can help young people succeed.
So let's talk about the other four.
Okay.
We've talked about connection. So you talk about basic needs. Mm-hmm. And, I think we think, of course, basic needs. And I often think when I'm hungry, and just impossible when I'm hangry. And I think about what would it have been to be sitting in a class feeling like that.
Right.
Yeah, you can't pay attention to anything.
And not only not know where you're going to eat, but where your parents are going to eat, where your siblings are going to eat. That's an incredible amount of anxiety and stress for young people. And at a time when so many of life's necessities cost more and more, rent or food or transportation, any of the necessities young people need, it is both sort of physically stressful, but mentally exhausting for young people. When we want them to be focused on doing well in school and finding a job, they are often consumed with worrying about how they're going to get their next meal or where am I going to sleep tonight. Yep. I'll tell you, when we were designing Thrive by 25, which is the work the foundation does, which is underneath this book, we had all these high aspirations of what we wanted young people to accomplish, and met with a focus group of young people. And one young man said, I watched my best friend get shot. And he had started college, but he said the stress of all of that, the trauma he had experienced had not been resolved, and he needed mental health help. Another young woman said, I have experienced bouts of homelessness. I'm not sure where I'm going to sleep every night. And it led us to this aha that we can't talk about this work and not be explicit about having your basic needs met, being a part of this framework. And so I applaud young people for reminding us of something that sometimes we too often take for granted, that basic needs are essential. Oftentimes we're thinking about all these lofty things we want young people to accomplish. But if these basics aren't met, they aren't going to be able to focus. Just look at how housing instability affects school performance. So many schools in this country, the 50% of the kids who started this school do not end the school year there because of housing instability. It is greatly disruptive to their success. So I don't think we ought to start any conversation unless we make sure young people have those basics met. They can't go up Maslow's hierarchy and realize their highest potential if they are worried about those things. Greatly contributes to mental health issues with young people.
And lack of sleep. I mean, at the level when my sons were teenagers, it was clear to me they needed more sleep, and their brains are wired for nocturnal activity, and we'll just leave it there. And so they sleep longer, and a lot of public schools have shifted high school later. But again, if you're not eating, if you don't know where you're sleeping, you're also not getting the sleep you need. Right. So basic needs, permanent caring connections, and then education and credentials. Yes. So one of the things I think anybody in the education world is exploring now are all the different ways you can be educated. But talk about the work there and what you see.
Yes, I love PIA and apprenticeships because they widen the bridge for young people. I think there's so much stress for young people because we have suggested to them that they are walking on a tightrope, that they've got to go to just the right school, they've got to get just the right grades, they've got to major in just the right thing. Imagine the pressure that puts on a young person whose brain is not fully developed. They don't know how to navigate through all these things. And we have told them, literally, you're walking on a thread if you want to be successful. And we all know life actually isn't like that, that we ought to be working to widen that bridge for young people. And that's what apprenticeships and other things do. You talked a bit about the numbers of young people who are struggling to enter the workforce. We've got to be creative about the on-ramps that we provide for young people. We can't just say, go to school and graduate from community college or, four-year institution and then go to work. We need to be creating on-ramps literally from the time they are teenagers, from summer jobs. Those are important on-ramp opportunities for young people to start. And wouldn't you rather have mistakes at 14 at a summer job, than at 19 or 20 when you are, have a bit more responsibility and maybe visibility to the opportunities that you have. So I am all about us thinking more creatively about what on-ramps look like. Service learning is a way for young people to create new on-ramps, core programs or new on-ramps we're experimenting with. But I want that bridge to be as wide as humanly possible for young people and for them also to get the message that pivoting is okay. Anne-Marie and I were talking before this conversation. I think I've had 9 lives of a career at this point. I've been a lawyer. I've been a lobbyist. I've run a corporate foundation. I've run public relations for a company, and now I lead a foundation. I'm trained as a lawyer. Like, all of us are going to have to pivot. How many people here are doing the same thing they started off their career with? Nobody in this room is raising their hands. Yet we give these messages to young people as if whatever they start with is the thing they're going to end with. And we know there are going to be jobs that exist now that won't exist 5 years from now. And there are jobs that haven't been created yet that these young people are going to have to do. So the other thing I think we got to really be clear about is pivoting, that we're all going to have to be agile and comfortable building skills in lots of different ways so that we can pivot to different opportunities when they come out. Those are the messages I want to see young people get. Wide bridge and twirl while you're on that bridge.
I love the pivot point because it's also true. I remember thinking I changed both, careers. My personal life shifted right at the end of my 20s. And the point, I was a very different person at 30 than I had been at 20. And of course you can't know that at 20 or 25. And again, it keeps happening this idea that you will grow and change, and what you do, if you are fortunate, will grow and change with you.
Just keep
So
building skills, just
exactly.
keep having experiences. And though people might look at my career and think it was a plan, it certainly was no
I would
plan.
say
I'm
that
just
too.
spinning on the bridge like everybody else.
It looks like a plan on a resume, but boy, it was
I say
not.
I lived it forward. You're reading it backwards. So yeah, we gotta be more honest with young people about what careers and life are really like.
Exactly. So we've got about 7 more minutes before I turn it to all of you. 2 more, right? So there's financial stability and leadership opportunities.
Yes.
And again, you don't normally hear either one when you're talking about teenagers.
So I'll be quick on financial stability. We need to make sure young people know how to manage the money that they earn, that they know how to save, that they understand credit. All of that certainly impacts their long-term financial future. The one I want to spend the most time on talking about is leadership. Young people love leadership opportunities. It's such a part of the way that their brains are wired. It is validating. It's encouraging to them, whether it's of their peers or in a workplace. I think there's so much more we can do to give young people leadership opportunities. And as you reflected on 250 years of this country, every movement in this country has been led by young people. And so we sell them short, but here they are, the engine that's led our country forward for 250 years. I think we ought to do more to give them leadership opportunities, and they really thrive in it. It helps build that executive functioning that we want them to have, and is essential to them becoming the adults that they want to be long term.
And so I completely agree. I often think of it also as you're trying on suits of clothes. And as a young woman, and a young woman who grew up in the South, leadership was not anything I thought about, and certainly not anything I was prepared for. But I remember, I didn't think I was a leader till pretty much my late 30s, but it was a kind of, you know, I can do this. And of course, that's true when you think about indigenous cultures or many religions, right? At confirmation, at the bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, or in Native American culture, often you would have to go out and survive by yourself. It was all a way of saying, you can do this, right? Yeah. You are now
independent.
Independent.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I just think there's more we can do. You know, the more we prevent young people from making decisions, the more we suggest to them they can't, that they aren't any good at it. And how are you going to build leadership and resilience if you don't practice it? That's what this time is about. It's about practicing leadership. As adults, one of the things we can do is explain to them our reasoning process on things. You know, we often tell them no, or we tell them you can't do that. We don't explain why. I was on a podcast and we talked about it's really a way for them to borrow your executive functioning for a little while. And by borrowing it and you voicing out loud, almost like a superhero, what you're thinking and why you think that, it helps them learn how to think in an executive function kind of way. So I think they want to be leaders. We need to model for them what that looks like and gently correct them or lead them in the direction that we want them to go. They're more than capable of it. We see in every part of our work, every time we invite young people to the table, they are smarter, they are more thoughtful, they are more open-minded than we would ever imagine them to be, and our best ideas come out of what young people have proposed to us. We should listen more to them.
That's wonderful. So get your questions ready, and I'll call on you and we'll get the mic because all the folks online, and hello everybody online. I don't know why I always think they're up there, but they're floating somewhere in the internet. I'll just say that as a parent, one of the things I realized was if you wanted to be able to change your child's mind, it helped if you were willing to change yours. So that in a discussion, if they, Mom, I want to stay out till midnight. No, you got to come home at 10. You listen to the arguments and you said, well, you're right. Probably the party won't really get going till such and such time. Come home at 11. It wasn't just a bargain. It was reasoning works. reasons and kind of conversation and trying to understand the other point of view. And yes, that's just modeling a form of thinking we'd like. So the floor is open. Yes. Hang on till the mic comes. And please just introduce yourself.
My name is Jo Freeman. My mother, who taught junior high school for 40 years, used to say that recklessness was the adolescent proclivity. And I will say that was consistent with what I read in the criminal justice statistics, which I had occasion to examine in depth at one point. And by far, the highest rate of violent crime is males between the ages of 15 and 25. Would you please fit those two observations into your framework?
I'd be happy to. We do a lot of work around juvenile justice at the KC Foundation. What we often describe as risk-taking is a part of the adolescent brain seeking new experiences that help it learn and expand. Your brain can't mature if you don't have new experiences. Our jobs as adults is to try to make sure those experiences happen in healthy, productive ways. A new experience can be a job. A new experience can be a leadership opportunity. Where we go wrong is when we don't create positive experiences for adolescents to grow and to have the maturity, to have the opportunity to mature, for their brains to mature in the ways that they need to. Even when young people make mistakes, the thing that we know is that they never talk about a punishment that got them on track. It is not a program that gets them on track. It is a person. And so when we talk about connection, the thing I would suggest is that connection is the most important thing we can do to help young people have those positive experiences they need, but also to get back on track if they make a mistake.
Yes.
Hi, I just want to say thank you for loving teenagers. I'm also one of those odd people that loves teenagers beginning at middle school. So thank you for that, because there's some narrative change that definitely needs to happen. My question is connected to the answer that you just offered, which is a lot of young people talk about the absence of third spaces, right? They don't have places that they can go after school. When I was younger, we would go to the mall or whatever, and they're saying that that is not something that they're experiencing. So if you had a crystal ball, magic wand, and you could create an ecosystem that is more embracing of young people in their development, what would exist in those spaces, programs or activities?
Oh, boy, I think that'd be great. I will give you an example that I know actually from the juvenile justice system. We just took our board to Houston last year, and they turned a former juvenile correction building into an opportunity center. And it is a hub for maybe 30 nonprofits in the area where they have a recording studio where young people can learn sound engineering. They have a construction center built inside of the building where young people can learn how to do construction trades. They have mental health spaces where young people can get therapy, or they can meet in group with one another. It is a phenomenal space. And what I universally heard young people say, it's a shame that I had to get the opportunity to be here after I made a mistake, that this is a juvenile justice program. Why don't we have this kind of opportunity center for all young people? So if I had a third space I could make, it would be an opportunity hub in every community where young people could go and be welcomed and be loved and find their future, find hobbies. It could be knitting or whatever that calms you and makes you have a good time. So that's what I would look for, third space opportunity centers.
It's interesting. Our president, Paul Butler, is chair of the board of Brotherhood Sister Soul in New York, and they built this fantastic center. It's 5 stories, but it is exactly that. It's a place where kids come of many different ages, but lots of teenagers, and have space they can just hang out, but also they can be exposed to things. And our political reform program recently published something on how many churches are being decommissioned. And across the country, this is work on civic assembly and trying to get communities together, but those spaces also can be for youth.
I love that.
Next question. Way in the back there. Oops. Was there one up here? Well, okay, way in the back, and then I'll come up. And do introduce yourself.
Hi there, I'm Sandra Balaban with Project Paraclete. I love teenagers too, and I love everything about your Thrive framework and that you're sharing. And I'm so excited to read the book, but not having read the book, I'm curious in your section on leadership if you speak specifically about civic leadership. And I was reading the results of the Harvard Youth Poll last month that shared that just 13% of young people think that our country is on the right track, which is frightening, right, and sobering, and a call to action. And so I'm curious your thoughts about how to promote community engagement and civic engagement.
Yeah, the book does not take on civic engagement of young people, but really about their interest and ability to lead across all facets of their lives, whether they are given leadership opportunities in schools, certainly in their communities, as in nonprofits, they're given experiences that are positive leadership experiences for them and at work. So I think it's a shame that young people are declining in their belief that they can have an impact around our politics. But I am always very encouraged about the sort of civic mindedness of young people. They care deeply about the world. They're often very frustrated and cynical when we don't live up to the sort of expectations we set for them, but they are always very excited, I find, to be of service in their communities. And so hopefully in doing that, they'll find their way to civic leadership as well.
And some of them anyway, are running for things like school board and mayor, much younger than anyone I could have ever imagined. I think it's great.
That's fantastic.
So right here.
Thank you, ladies. My name is Claudia Bellany. I'm a consultant at Novasys. And this has been a remarkable conversation. I have twins that are 13-year-old boys. I love teenagers. I love teenagers. I love teenagers. So we just were having this conversation. Can't wait to read your book. Just having a conversation about why it's important to be connected in the global ecosystem. And I just feel like, well, I don't feel, everything is just such a struggle for them to see the broader perspective of why being connected, social capital, volunteer work, everything is basketball, basketball, basketball. Very smart, advanced learners, all the things, but trying to get them to see how you need to use your smartness to be leaders in your community. Very one word, I'm fine, fine. The cool, monosyllabic, all of it. And then I think there's a missing mark and a gap in the market when we're trying to reach young folk, because I'm a teen mom for all their teams are basketball programming, is the cool factor. Whenever we're trying to get kids more involved, the marketing and the promotion is very not cool. And so I'm like, would I want to go to this if I was a 13-year-old, 14-year-old? And so how do you work with partners to make things more inclusive and more marketable? So I had like 3 questions in there. So pull out what you need to. I had a lot.
I'm glad you love teens because you're in the middle of it. I would not dismiss your teens' love of basketball. We want young people to find a passion, whatever that might be. And there's skills they're building in that passion. So don't dismiss that. Any passion is that's positive, that's a success. Because we want young people to be engaged. And as for cool factor, my daughter may or may not say, I know what cool is, so I'm not sure. But the thing we find that works best is you engage young people in the design of programs and the promotion of programs. And when you do that, they're going to be cool according to their definition. And they know what other young people want to do. So I would just say whatever you're designing, engage young people in it, and you'll be guaranteed to come out with a better result than if 50-year-olds designed it.
One of my sons, when he was a teenager and I took this job, he kept saying, Mom, you just need merch. You need merch. And I'm trying to explain to him that, think tanks and merch, But exactly to your point, he's like, he couldn't believe I was missing this huge opportunity.
Let them design it. It will be 1,000%
Indeed,
better.
indeed. There you go, Lisa.
Yes. Hi. Thank you so much for this conversation. I'm really excited about this book as well. I'm Lisa Guernsey. As Anne-Marie noted, I work with many of the folks in PIA, but I also am running the birth through 12th grade team in the various initiatives there. And we've been talking about ecosystems. And one of the things that, and maybe it's a follow-up really to your question about how do you make this cool, with younger children, parents can just put them in the car and be like, we're going to try these new things. We're going to go to this new third space. We're going to, go to the trampoline park. We're going to go here. And I'm certainly remembering this from my own raising teenagers. Like by the time they're 12, 13, like, Mom, really? Like, really? I don't want it, whatever. All the words. So peer-to-peer learning is something I'm wondering about, and maybe it's in the book. I haven't gotten through it all
It is
yet.
the neuroscience.
Yes, like how do you create spaces where youth are learning from each other, but in a positive way and not
Yeah. Part of what happens in this time period, as we've experienced with young people, is that their relationships with peers become more important to them than their relationships with adults. Do not hear me to say that their relationships with adults are unimportant. What I'm saying is that they are, in their independence, becoming much more aware of and focused on social relationships. We should use that. And the more you have young people promote things to do or opportunities. So one, if they've been involved in designing it, they are much more likely to promote it. We've seen this many times. And use that as a way to attract other young people to programming. So get a circle of young people who help design it. Those young people will tell their friends, and that automatically, I think, makes it cooler than if an adult tried to get on social media and maybe invite them to attend.
It was very depressing to realize how little time and influence we had relative to their peers, their teachers, etc.
But you do have more than you think. They are listening. They might not be responding, but they are listening to every word that you say. Young people know that they don't have it all figured out. Like part of their bravado is that they might not acknowledge that, but they know adults know more than they do. And so they're going to listen, but they're just not going to acknowledge. So don't stop talking to them, even if they aren't responding.
I hope that's still true.
Important.
There was somebody right back there. There you go. Yes.
Thank you so much. My name is Diana, and I teach high school in New York City.
Yay, Diana.
Yeah, I want to second everything that you're saying, the peer-to-peer, and definitely having them just co-create in the classroom. It's co-led. I tell them I may have the license here, but I'm learning from you equally. What I'm struggling is not with the children, not the students, it's the adults, with the factor of being rigorous while also acknowledging the basic necessities. I have parents that may feel, or people in the community, or even while here in DC, while I'm doing a fellowship, that feel that we're focusing too much on external factors and not being rigorous enough, that we're caring too much, which is not something that I thought I would ever have to worry about. But how do you navigate that space of, yes, I am being rigorous, but I also am an empathetic human being. And if my student doesn't have food, I'm not going to hold them accountable for that lesson maybe in that moment, but at a different time. So just trying to navigate those two.
I do think it's so important for young people's voices and lived experience to be given light. So whether it's at a PTA meeting or something, how do you let young people describe what their lives are really like? I talked about this tightrope. We've talked about basic needs. I think the more you allow young people to describe what they are navigating, you see it every day, so you're able to be empathetic. But there are lots of adults who have no idea what young people are really navigating. We see this with legislators all the time. The best thing we can do is have young people come and talk to legislators about their real experiences, their real challenges, and that seems to take the temperature down a lot of times of not expectations, but just misunderstanding about who young people are, what their challenges are. So you're in just rarefied air that you are in close connection with young people every day, and I applaud you for listening to them and being caring to them. There are young people every day who are going to remember how much you cared about what their lives were really like. Our challenge is to make sure more adults get to hear what young people's lives are really, really like. We should flood the hill with teenagers.
We should replace the hill with teenagers.
You said that, not me, Emery.
So last question. I see a hand there. That's the last question.
Perfect follow on for Diane here, because I wanted to ask about the traditional education model, because nothing seems farther divorced from this, what we're talking about, than that, I would say. I mean, even I also have twin boys. They're 10, so not quite teenagers yet. But even for that age group and having like a child with disabilities, we have to bring psychologists to every single meeting to explain to teachers how his brain works, right? And just basic things like, it's not that he doesn't want to, he's not capable of X, Y, Z, right? And the administration, it's not so much the teachers, but the administration particularly seems to have no understanding of child development. And I don't know if you feel the same, but I'm just wondering if like you see any movement in the traditional education sphere, because we can do things like, apprenticeship and these alternative pathways, but we also, I think, need to change, the traditional education system, since that's what the majority of people are going through.
Yeah, I think there is more knowledge now about adolescent development than there has ever been. There's Center for the Developing Adolescent at UCLA. There are other institutes that are helping to bring this knowledge and science to the forefront and helping to translate it for practitioners so they know what that means in a practical sense. I think we just got to do more to expand this knowledge. I mean, look at all of us in the room. We weren't sort of taught this as we were growing up, and we've got to embed it more into educator and leadership curriculums if we want to get good outcomes. But I'm also on a mission to make sure it goes beyond education, that employers need to understand adolescent development if they want to understand their younger workers, that policymakers need to understand it if we're going to have policies and practices that are going to be more responsive to young people. So I just think we're in the early days, I would say, of really understanding adolescent development in the way that we do, and then applying it in practical ways to all these different domains of life.
So may your mission thrive.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
This was just a wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
It was the perfect end to the day. The book is out there. You should get it, read it. I hope everybody does. It's been a rich day. For some of you, it's been a long day, a good day, a full day. So the only thing left is a reception. Just you get to have a little something to drink and to eat and to relax. So we invite you to join us just right out here. And again, another round of applause for Lisa and for Paya.